And just before we came on air, they sacked Thomas Frank. He has gone as head coach, as manager of the football club. But no league wins in 2026. Tottenham have won just 2 of 13 home games this season. It's a run of 2 wins in 17 in the league. Thomas Frank has been sacked. 11 days until the next game at home to Arsenal. Was it a timely window for change? Well, the hierarchy thought it was, and that's why they've made a change. Simon, just in the meantime, before I head back to the calls, if you were up there in the Spurs hierarchy at the moment, would you be all out to appoint somebody now on a permanent basis, or would it be interim until you had a good old think about it?
I think it's a difficult question to answer, because you've got to understand why it is that Thomas Frank has failed. And there'll be a variety of opinions. I don't care what people say. This is not, despite the fact they finished 17th last year and they're sitting in 17th this season, this is not, to me, a bottom 6 side. This is a side that should be comfortably, with the quality they've got in it, sitting inside the top 10, moving towards perhaps 8th in the league, and nothing really much beyond that. So the question would have to be, why did Thomas Frank not achieve the things that we thought he's going to do, and what do we need to do to arrest? If we really believe that we're staring a team that's completely degraded now and is really on the cusp of being drawn into a real relegation battle with West Ham or whoever else is beneath them, then I'd be looking at someone that's going to get me past this initial problem. And whether that's, as myself and Danny were discussing, in the break the style of play issue that ultimately makes it more simple. You don't want players playing out from the back. You don't want players having too much possession, because ultimately the moment they do a bad pass, the fans will be on their back. You perhaps want to just go simplified football. And then you talk about managers that can do that. I mean, Sam Allardyce is busy doing commercials on TV, isn't he? I mean, that to me, those days seem like they've gone.
Yeah.
But it might not be.
Yeah.
De Zerbi, De Zerbi's a good coach. He brings his own set of problems. But the fact of the matter is that there's a group of players there. I mean, one of the things that really undermined Thomas Frank in my mind was Romero. Not just because
Romero,
not just because of his performances on the field, but because of his outbursts. As an owner of a football club, if I saw a player seeming to believe he's got license to say these sort of things, I'd be looking at my manager going, what kind of control have you got over these players? And yeah, we saw instances of Thomas Frank on the field where players wouldn't shake his hand and stuff of that nature. And I think that's the modern day footballer, full stop, anyway.
But Romero was pointing his posts at the hierarchy, but not at Thomas Frank.
Yeah, but he was speaking. That's not his job. That's not his space. That's not his place. If you've got people like if you've got the lunatics running the asylum, who is in control?
I said on Monday night when I did the show on here, he should have fined him and took the armband off him. You can't have players going out talking about the hierarchy, talking about anything, whether he's talking about the medical team, whether he's talking about why. I don't even know what his message meant, but we've covered that. But I think he is a symbol of what's wrong at Tottenham. There's no. The leadership isn't strong enough. It doesn't look like he's been in complete control of the football element. Some of the players, some days they give it a go, some days they're off it. That's not the sign of a great leader.
But briefly, Danny, do you worry tactically if it's De Zerbi?
Short term, I would, because all his teams play through the lines. Really strong on possession. I think I've said on it before, I was lucky enough to watch him do a couple of sessions. It was really impressive.
Yeah.
And when his Brighton team were at it, they were as good as I've seen Brighton. In fact, Brighton are much worse now than the De Zerbi Brighton. But they always play. He won't be going. And I just don't think, as a group of players, when your confidence is low and you're desperate for points and the fans are disgruntled, last thing you want to be doing is trying to play out from the back. When your keeper's Vicario's a nervous kitten with the ball anyway.
I just squared a circle, because when you saw Tottenham play against Man City in the second half and you saw Tottenham play against Dortmund at home, this was not a side that was bereft of confidence. Alex just did it and said, well, it was against 10 men. It wasn't against 10 men for the first 30 minutes where Tottenham ripped them to pieces. So how do you talk about a lack of confidence in that situation?
Well, I think the Champions League games for Tottenham generally have been against poor opposition. Dortmund was a decent performance for 20 minutes. I was at the game. There was a good intensity about them. It was a good start to a game. The other good elements, the second half against Villa in the Cup, the second half against City in the league, that's players reacting when you're already losing.
Yeah.
And it's the easiest time to play. Being able to show that level of commitment on the ball and bravery on the ball when it's 0-0 and there's 60,000 people on your case.
Yeah.
That's where the true players are.
Well, call after call after call is coming in from Tottenham fans. They were chanting last night, you're getting sacked in the morning at Thomas Frank. Those who were chanting that have got their way. Thomas Frank's been sacked. Jason, good morning. Were you one of those saying he should be sacked in the morning?
I wasn't saying he should be sacked in the morning. I was at the game. I was also away at Manchester United on Saturday. And look, answering Simon's question, Simon said, why hasn't it really worked out for Thomas? And part of the reason for that is because I don't believe Thomas Frank was ever the right appointment, because Thomas Frank didn't have the credentials or the experience to run a club like Tottenham Hotspur. He at the start of the season for Brentford, it would be, you've got to stay in the Premier League. So he wasn't a manager that came that was used to getting clubs into the top four. And the expectation of the fans at Spurs, and for what we hear from the board, is that we want to be challenging and be in the top four. Realistically speaking, we don't have the players to do that, but we shouldn't be 17th in the Premier League. Do I feel sorry for Thomas Frank this morning? Honestly, yes. Do I think we needed to make a change? Yes, because I think he'd lost the dressing room. And I think once you lose the dressing room, that's a serious problem when you're at 17th in the Premier League. But really, where people are coming on and absolutely flagging off Daniel Levy. It was Daniel Levy that he took that club. Alan Sugar left a fantastic foundation at Tottenham. Daniel Levy came on and built on that foundation, and we got to a final of the Champions League. We were challenging for a couple of seasons to win the Premier League. And yes, he made mistakes along the way, but I can't put the finger or the blame at Daniel Levy. I think that's completely wrong. But ENIC, I think are a disgrace, and I think that I feel sorry for Thomas, because I think he's been massively let down by ENIC, not Daniel Levy.
Okay, Jason, thank you for that. Neville, good morning. Do you feel sorry for Thomas Frank, Neville?
No, I'm fuming this morning, Jim, Simon, Danny. I've supported Spurs since 1960. And I've got a broken leg, and I think the people who mending my leg can mend my leg quicker than ENIC can Tottenham Hotspur. Daniel Levy was the best thing that happened to Tottenham, to leave Tottenham. And now we've got his people he left behind running the club with no rudder. You know what? I've supported Tottenham since 1960. And with this lot in charge, if we were to be relegated, that would be better then, because we can get rid of the so-called board that run a football club, who are a big football club, and these fans who demand Thomas Frank get a sack. Okay,
What, you'd welcome relegation, Neville?
I would, with a heavy heart, say I'm sad to say we'll go down. What next? We've sacked him. What's the plans to appoint someone? De Serbi, do me a favour. Let's get someone in who we deserve to run that great football club of ours.
Who, Neville?
It's not good enough. Who? I don't know, and I don't think they know neither. They're waiting, and I've got it from good sources, they're waiting for Pochettino after the World Cup. Okay, we've got to wait till July for Pochettino, and he'll walk back into that place.
Okay, Neville, listen, thanks for the call. There's a lot of anger out there, Danny. You can sense it. A lot of frustration as well. And Simon, ENIC, constantly being brought up. Finger of blame being pointed at them, being pointed at Daniel.
Yeah, because people expect more. And if you've got this wonderful stadium and you've got this significant turnover and you've arrived repeatedly in and amongst the top four over recent seasons up until the last 2 or 3 years, you've been in a Champions League final, you've missed opportunities when the fans think that Pochettino should have been supported post the Champions League final. They didn't kick on from there. Of course, there's going to be an element of disappointment and irritation and frustration. The ownership model wasn't going to change, because the ownership model was the ultimate controlling influence behind Daniel Levy. Daniel Levy worked within the confines of the guidelines that he was allowed to work, irrespective of whether he had autonomy on a daily basis, that ENIC set. So it wasn't going to be any different. So I'm quite pleased that they're catching some of the shrapnel that they're quite happy to allow Daniel to get in the way of. But we've got to get context as well. This side, with this group of players and this kind of investment being put into this squad, irrespective of whether you think they're top players, is not a bottom four, bottom five side.
No.
The reasons why it is because they're not being managed in a certain way. And I feel sorry for Thomas Frank because he lost his nerve. He started fine at Spurs, then lost his nerve and at the same time as having a lot of players injured, he couldn't construct a dynamic that created outcomes. Yet he got individual outcomes. Every single time you felt that Thomas was going to turn the corner, back it came. He goes and beats Dortmund. You think that's a turning point. He goes and gets a 2-2
So
draw.
was it a good appointment then?
I think it was a sensible appointment. How do you know if someone can step up unless you take that view? You have every challenge in life that you bring in top managers like Mourinho and you bring in top managers like Conte, and you have a framework at Tottenham Hotspur. Some football clubs have a different framework. Some football clubs are owned by Middle Eastern consortiums and have a different way of operating. Tottenham Hotspur in the 90s, prior to Alan Sugar, were going bust. Prior to Sugar, who set the principle of how Tottenham's going to be run. Prior to that, Irving Scholar. Yeah, they won trophies. in a different time. Yeah, they won trophies every single year. Football has changed. They're not operating in a vacuum.
Yeah.
Long have come Chelsea. Arsenal have always been a legacy football club. Liverpool have been a legacy football club for a long time. Man United the same. Man City have arrived with a big bag of cash. Tottenham's model was different. It was set up by sugar, but prior to that, Tottenham were going to go bust.
Yeah.
So you've got a club that's being well run economically, but the expectations of the fans, and rightly so, is to see some silverware, to see a progress.
Yeah. Okay, Simon says that Thomas Frank lost his nerve. Well, now he's lost his job. Interestingly, I hear that Spurs players have 5 days off. There's no game this weekend, 11 days before they play next, and that's against Arsenal. So plenty of time for them to contemplate the future. Thomas Frank is gone.